I'm 28 years old, and for a few hours I was a wife. The wedding was everything I had ever dreamed it would be. White roses, soft candlelight, and all the people we loved gathered in one place. My dress felt like a cloud, and Mark, my new husband, looked at me as if I were the only person in the world. I held on to that feeling, that perfect, shimmering moment, because I knew it was fragile. It was fragile because my sister, Lisa, was my maid of honor. Lisa stood up to give her toast, a champagne flute in her hand and a smile on her face that never quite reached her eyes. She was beautiful. Everyone always said so. But I knew the chill that lingered just beneath the surface. I held my breath as she tapped her glass. The room fell silent. "I'd like to make a toast," she began, her voice sweet as honey. "To my sister Clara, who has always known exactly what she wants and has always gotten it." A few people chuckled, but I felt a familiar prickle of unease. It was a classic Lisa line, a compliment with a sharp, hidden edge. She turned her gaze to Mark, who was sitting beside me, his hand covering mine on the white linen tablecloth. "And to the groom," Lisa continued, her smile widening just a fraction, "who finally got over his past." The air in the room shifted. It was a subtle change, but I felt it. A few of Mark's friends shuffled uncomfortably. My parents shot each other a quick, worried glance. Mark's hand tightened on mine. His past was a forbidden topic. A messy breakup years ago, he had told me. It was painful, and he had asked me not to press for details. I had respected that. I thought love meant trusting someone with their scars, even the ones they could not show you. Lisa, however, saw it as a secret she could weaponize. She had hinted for months that she knew more, dangling it over me like a threat. I tried to smile, to pretend her words meant nothing. It was just Lisa being Lisa. I would not let her ruin this day. I raised my glass, ready to move on, to let the awkward moment pass. But it did not pass. From the back of the grand, wood-paneled reception hall, a small voice cut through the silence. It was high and clear and utterly piercing. "Daddy!" Every head turned. My own heart seemed to stop. I followed everyone's gaze toward the ornate double doors. A little boy, no older than 4 or 5, was standing there. He had a mop of curly brown hair, big brown eyes, and he was pointing. He was pointing directly at our table, directly at Mark. He took off running, his little legs pumping. A woman appeared in the doorway behind him, her face a mask of horror. She whispered his name, a desperate hissed sound, but he did not stop. He dodged a waiter, scurried around my aunt's table, and did not slow until he reached the head table. He threw his arms around Mark's leg, his face buried in the fabric of his tuxedo pants. "Daddy," he said again, his voice muffled but clear. "I found you." The world went silent. The music had stopped. The chatter had died. The only sound was the frantic breathing of the woman who was now rushing toward us. Mark was frozen. His face was a ghastly, pale white. He looked from the child clinging to his leg, to me, and back again. There was no recognition in his eyes, only pure, unadulterated panic. But it was not the panic of a stranger being accosted. It was the panic of a man whose deepest secret had just exploded in the middle of his own wedding reception. I stared at the little boy. He had Mark's hair. He had Mark's eyes. And I felt the perfect shimmering moment of my wedding day shatter into a million tiny pieces. I looked over at my sister. Lisa was still standing. Her champagne flute held perfectly still. And on her face was a small, triumphant smirk. She knew. She had known all along. This was not an accident. This was her wedding gift to me. The woman finally reached our table, her cheeks flushed with shame. "Leo, no," she pleaded, trying to pull the little boy away. "I'm so sorry. We were just supposed to watch from the back. He got away from me." Her words hung in the air, each one a hammer blow against my already cracking composure. Supposed to watch from the back. It was a confession. They were invited. Someone had told them to be here. My gaze snapped back to Lisa. Her smirk was gone, replaced by a flawless mask of concerned innocence. But I had seen it. I knew. She had orchestrated this entire nightmare. My mother was the first to move. She rushed to my side, her hand on my shoulder. "Clara, honey, are you all right?" she whispered, her voice trembling. My father was on his feet, his face grim, trying to wave away the gaping guests as if he could physically push the moment back into the realm of the private. I could not answer my mother. I could not feel her hand on my shoulder. All I could feel was the ice spreading through my veins. I looked at Mark, this man I had married less than 3 hours ago. "Mark?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who is this?" He finally broke his paralysis. He shook his head, looking at me with wide, pleading eyes. "I don't know, Clara. I swear. I have never seen this child before in my life." But his voice shook. The lie was so blatant, so poorly constructed in his panic, that it was almost more insulting than the truth would have been. The little boy, Leo, started to cry, confused by the tension and his father's rejection. "Daddy, it's me," he sobbed, clinging tighter. The woman, his mother, finally managed to pry him off Mark's leg. She scooped him into her arms, murmuring soothing words to him, her own eyes filled with tears. "I am so sorry," she said again, this time looking directly at me. "This is a horrible mistake. We shouldn't have come." I found my voice. It was cold and steady, a stranger's voice coming from my mouth. "Who asked you to come?" I asked. The woman, Sarah, flinched. She looked over at Lisa, who was now pretending to be comforting our mother. The glance was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. It was all the confirmation I needed. My own sister had found Mark's secret, a secret so deep he had hidden it from me completely, and she had deployed it like a bomb at the heart of my happiness. My father stepped forward. "I think it's time for everyone to go," he announced to the room, his voice strained but firm. The spell was broken. A low murmur rippled through the guests. People started to gather their things, their eyes darting between me, Mark, the crying child, and my perfectly composed sister. They were leaving my wedding not with memories of joy, but with the most scandalous piece of gossip they would have all year. Mark reached for my hand again. "Clara, please," he begged. "We need to talk. This isn't what it looks like." I pulled my hand away. "I think it's exactly what it looks like," I said, my voice flat. I stood up, my beautiful dress suddenly feeling like a costume. I needed to get away. I needed to breathe, but I was not going to run. Not from this. I walked around the table, away from my parents and my shell-shocked new husband. I walked straight towards the woman and her child. Sarah saw me coming and tensed, hugging the boy tighter as if to protect him from me. But I had no anger for her. She was just a pawn in my sister's cruel game. "What's your name?" I asked her, keeping my voice low and calm. "Sarah," she whispered. "And this is Leo?" I asked, looking at the tear-streaked face of the little boy who looked so much like the man I thought I knew. She nodded, her expression a mixture of fear and misery. "I am so sorry. I never would have come if I knew it would cause this." She told me he wanted us here. "She?" I prompted gently. Sarah's eyes flickered towards Lisa again, who was now busy talking to one of our cousins, acting as if nothing was wrong. "Your sister," Sarah confirmed, her voice barely audible. She said Mark wanted Leo to see him get married, that he wanted to start being a family. The cruelty of it stole my breath. Lisa had not just used this woman and her child to humiliate me. She had used their hope. She had given them a beautiful false dream of a family reunited, knowing all along that she was setting them up for this brutal public rejection. I felt a surge of something hot and sharp in my chest. It was not just hurt anymore. It was rage. A cold, clear, clarifying rage. I looked from Sarah's devastated face to my sister's blithely smiling one. Lisa thought she had won. She thought she had broken me. She had no idea what she had just started. I turned back to Sarah. "I believe you," I said, "and I am sorry this happened to you and your son. This is not your fault." I reached into my purse, pulled out a pen and a cocktail napkin. "Can I have your phone number? I think you and I need to talk again when this is all over." She looked surprised but relieved. She recited her number and I wrote it down, my hand perfectly steady. I folded the napkin and put it securely in my small clutch. It was the first piece of evidence. The first stone I would use to build my case. My father was trying to get Mark to leave the hall, to go somewhere private. Mark was resisting, his eyes locked on me, desperation etched on his face. "Clara, don't do this. Don't shut me out." He called across the emptying room. I ignored him. I walked over to where my sister was standing. She turned to me, her face a perfect picture of sisterly concern. "Oh, Clara," she said, reaching for my arm. I'm just horrified. "How could he do this to you?" I let her touch me for a second, feeling the coldness of her skin. Then I stepped back. "Save it, Lisa," I said, my voice low enough that only she could hear. "I know you did this." Her eyes widened in mock surprise. "What are you talking about? I would never—" "You invited them." I cut her off. "You told that woman to come here. You wanted this to happen." She dropped the act. The concern vanished, replaced by a flicker of that same triumphant smirk I had seen earlier. "You can't prove that," she whispered, her voice laced with venom. "He's the one with the secret kid, not me. Looks like your perfect life isn't so perfect after all." I stared at her, at the sister who had shared my childhood, who I had trusted and loved despite 1,000 smaller betrayals over the years. This was different. This was a declaration of war. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's not perfect, but it's mine. And you just made the biggest mistake of your life." She just laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Oh, please. What are you going to do?" I did not answer. I just held her gaze for a long moment, letting her see the ice in my eyes. Then I turned and walked away. I walked past my crying mother, my furious father, and the man who was supposed to be my husband. I walked out of the reception hall, out of my ruined wedding, and into the cool night air. I did not know where I was going, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was not over. I didn't go to the hotel suite Mark and I were supposed to share. The thought of being in a room filled with roses and champagne, a room meant for a happy new beginning, was sickening. I called my best friend, Amy. She had been a bridesmaid, a witness to the entire implosion. Her voice was tight with fury when she answered. "Clara, where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm going to kill Lisa, I swear it." "I'm outside," I said, my voice hollow. "Can you come get me? I can't be here." "I'm on my way. Don't move," she ordered. Minutes later, her car screeched to a halt in front of the venue. I got in, the heavy satin of my wedding dress bunching up around me. I felt like a child playing dress-up in a tragic play. Amy didn't say anything. She just drove. We ended up at her small, cozy apartment. It was a world away from the opulent disaster I had just left. She made me a cup of tea while I sat on her sofa, still in my gown. "Talk to me," she said, sitting across from me, her expression serious. Amy was my opposite in many ways. She was fiery and impulsive where I was calm and measured. But she was also fiercely loyal. I told her everything. The toast, the child, the name Leo, Mark's denial, Sarah's whispered confession that Lisa had invited her, the confrontation with Lisa in the hallway. I pulled out the cocktail napkin with Sarah's number on it. "She used a child, Amy," I said, the words catching in my throat. "She used a little boy's hope to get at me." Amy's face hardened. "That is a new low, even for her. And Mark? A son? He never said a word? I shook my head. A fresh wave of betrayal washing over me. Never. He told me he had a messy breakup. He made it sound like he was the victim. He lied to me for 2 years. Okay, Amy said, her practical side taking over. So we have 2 traitors here, the snake sister and the lying husband. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. My mind was a chaotic storm of hurt and anger. My marriage is over before it even began. My wedding day is a public humiliation. My own sister hates me enough to do this. The marriage part. We can deal with, Amy said firmly. Annulment. It's clean. He lied about a massive life-altering fact. That's fraud. But Lisa, we can't let her get away with this, Clara. We can't. I knew she was right. For years, I had let Lisa's behavior slide. The backhanded compliments, the accidental snubs, the subtle ways she tried to undermine me. I always made excuses for her. Our parents always made excuses for her. Lisa had been sick a lot as a child, a series of severe respiratory illnesses that had kept her isolated and fragile. My parents, racked with guilt and fear, had coddled her into adulthood. She was given a job at our father's construction company that she was not qualified for. They paid for her stylish condo. They bought her a new car every few years. She was 30 years old, but she had never truly had to stand on her own 2 feet. In their eyes, I was the strong one, the one who didn't need their help. So I was the one who was expected to absorb Lisa's casual cruelty and forgive. Not this time. This was not a backhanded compliment. This was a calculated act of destruction. I need proof, I said, the idea beginning to form in my mind. Lisa's denial was too confident. She thinks it's my word against hers, and she knows who our parents will believe. They always believe her. So we get proof, Amy said, her eyes lighting up with a strategic fire. You have the mom's number. Sarah, you call her. You get the whole story, every detail. The thought of talking to Sarah again was daunting. She was the living embodiment of Mark's betrayal, but she was also the key to unlocking Lisa's guilt. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. I'll call her tomorrow. I spent a sleepless night on Amy's couch, the expensive lace of my wedding dress scratching my skin. I finally took it off around dawn, folding it carefully and placing it in a garment bag Amy found. It felt like I was putting away a life that was no longer mine. The next morning, my phone was full of messages, dozens from Mark, each one more desperate than the last. Apologies, explanations, pleas for me to come home. There were also messages from my parents, asking where I was, telling me they were worried. And one from Lisa. I hope you're okay. I can't believe Mark would be so deceitful. I'm here for you if you need me. The hypocrisy was so astounding it almost made me laugh. I deleted it without a second thought. I ignored Mark's messages, too. The only person I was interested in talking to was Sarah. I waited until mid-morning, giving her time to settle. My hand trembled as I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, her voice wary. Hello? Sarah, it's Clara, I said. From the wedding. There was a pause. Oh, hi. I know this is a difficult call to make, I started, but I was hoping you would be willing to talk to me. I need to understand what happened. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear a child's television show in the background. I don't want any more trouble, she said finally. Last night was the worst night of my life. My son cried for an hour. I am so sorry for that, I said, and I meant it. Leo is an innocent victim in all of this. And so are you. That's why I'm calling. The person who did this to all of us needs to be held accountable. But I can't do that unless I know the whole truth. She sighed, a long, weary sound. What do you want to know? My sister, Lisa. She contacted you, right? Can you tell me exactly what she said? She found me on social media about a month ago, Sarah began, her voice flat and tired. She said she was Mark's fiance's sister and she was helping plan the wedding. She was so friendly. She said Mark talked about Leo all the time. She said he missed him and felt guilty for not being a bigger part of his life. Every word was a small, sharp sting. Lisa had laid the groundwork for a month. She told me that Mark was scared, Sarah continued. Scared of how you would react if you knew about Leo. She said he wanted to introduce you to the idea of him being a father slowly. She said it was her idea, that Leo and I could come to the wedding. She said we could stand in the back and Leo could just see his dad on his big day. She said Mark would be so happy to know he was there. And you believed her? I asked, trying to keep the judgment out of my voice. Why wouldn't I? She asked, a defensive edge to her tone. Mark and I, we ended badly. But he always paid his child support on time. I thought maybe he had grown up. I thought maybe he wanted to be a father. She was so convincing. She said she was doing it for him. A surprise. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Lisa had played on Sarah's hopes, on her desire for her son to have a father. She had painted herself as a benevolent future aunt, bridging a difficult gap. Did she give you anything? I asked, remembering Sarah's words from the night before. She gave me money, Sarah admitted, her voice thick with shame. $200, for a new suit for Leo and for the trouble. She said it was from her and Mark, a little gift. We met for coffee last week. She gave it to me in cash. My mind was racing. Cash, harder to trace. But the meeting itself, that was a lead. Sarah, this is very important, I said. Do you still have the messages she sent you? The texts or social media messages? I think so, she said. I never delete anything. I can look. Can you send them to me? I asked. Screenshots of everything. Please, it's the only way I can prove what she did. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I held my breath. He really didn't know we were coming, did he? She asked, her voice small. No, I said honestly. He had no idea. He was as shocked as I was. Then she did all of this just to be cruel, Sarah murmured, more to herself than to me. She used my son. Yes, I said. She did. I'll send you the screenshots, she said, her voice now firm with a new, cold anger of her own. She doesn't deserve to get away with this. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a series of screenshots. Texts from a number I didn't recognize, but the conversation was exactly as Sarah had described. Hi, Sarah. It's Lisa, Mark's future sister-in-law. I know this is random, but I was hoping we could chat about something important. Mark misses Leo so much. He's just so worried about telling Clara. I have an idea that could make everyone happy. What if you and Leo came to the wedding, just to watch from the back? It would mean the world to Mark. Let me give you some cash for a new outfit for the little guy. Think of it as a gift from your future family. Reading the words, seeing the cheerful emojis Lisa had used, made me feel sick. It was all there. A calculated, premeditated plot to cause maximum devastation. I now had the weapon Lisa thought I could never find. I forwarded the screenshots to Amy with a simple message. Got them. Amy's reply was instant. Game on. I spent the rest of the day at Amy's apartment, fielding calls from my frantic parents. I finally answered a call from my mother in the afternoon. Clara, thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? She cried. I'm fine, Mom. I'm at Amy's, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You need to come home. We need to sort this out. Your father is furious with Mark. I'm not coming home, I said. And this isn't about Mark right now. This is about Lisa. There was a pause. What does Lisa have to do with this? She's been so worried about you. She feels just awful about what happened. The ease with which my mother defended her was a familiar pain. Mom, Lisa did this. She orchestrated the whole thing. Clara, don't be ridiculous, my mother said. her tone shifting from worried to scolding. "You're upset and you're lashing out. Your sister would never do something so horrible." "I have proof, Mom," I said, my voice cold. "I have text messages. She invited them." "Text messages can be faked," my mother retorted immediately. A flimsy defense I had heard her use before when Lisa was caught in a lie. "You're just trying to shift the blame because you're hurt about Mark." I felt a profound sense of exhaustion. It was like running into a brick wall. They would never see what they didn't want to see. "Okay, Mom," I said, my voice flat. "If that's what you want to believe." "Come home, Clara. We can talk to Mark together. Maybe it's a misunderstanding." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not coming home. I need some space." I ended the call before she could argue further. I knew then that just showing them the texts wouldn't be enough. Lisa had years of their willful blindness protecting her. I needed something more. Something they couldn't deny. Something that hit them where it would hurt the most. I thought about what Sarah had said. "We met for coffee last week. She gave it to me in cash." A meeting, cash. Lisa didn't have a lot of her own money. She spent everything she got. But she had something else. She had a company credit card. She had a company expense account. An idea, cold and sharp, began to form in my mind. My sister thought she was untouchable. I was about to prove her wrong. The path forward was becoming clearer. This was no longer just about exposing a cruel act. It was about dismantling the entire system of lies and entitlement that had allowed her to thrive. The next step was to talk to Mark. I had been avoiding him, but I needed to understand the full scope of his lie. Not to forgive him, but to arm myself with information. He was a piece of the puzzle, and I needed to see how he fit before I made my final move. I sent him a single text message. "We need to talk. Meet me at the park on Elm Street in an hour. Come alone." He agreed immediately. I chose the park because it was neutral ground. It wasn't my home or his or the memory-haunted apartment at Amy's. It was just a place. I sat on a bench watching children play on a swing set, feeling 100 years old. Mark arrived looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red-rimmed, his suit from the wedding was gone, replaced by rumpled jeans and a t-shirt. He looked broken. A small, vindictive part of me was glad. He stopped a few feet away from the bench as if he was afraid to get any closer. "Clara," he said, his voice hoarse. "Sit down, Mark," I said, my tone flat. He sat on the far end of the bench, leaving a wide space between us. "I am so sorry," he began, the words tumbling out of him. "I know that's not enough. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know I never wanted to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me, or you didn't want to get caught?" I asked, my voice cutting. He flinched. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Mark," I shot back. "There was a little boy at my wedding calling you Daddy. A little boy I knew nothing about. How could you not tell me?" "I was afraid," he whispered, looking down at his hands. "Sarah and I, it was a long time ago. Before I met you. It was a mistake. A one-night thing. I didn't even know she was pregnant until months later. She didn't want anything from me, just child support. It was easier to just put it in a box, to pretend it wasn't my life." "He's not a box, Mark. He's a person, a child, your son." "I know," he said, his voice thick with shame. "I know that now. In the beginning, I was young and stupid. I sent the money every month and I told myself that was enough, that I was doing my part. And then I met you. And I was so happy. You were so perfect. I thought if I told you, you would see me as damaged goods. You would leave me." His fear, his insecurity, I could almost understand it. But it didn't excuse the depth of the deception. "So you chose to build our entire relationship, our marriage, on a lie." "I was going to tell you," he insisted, looking up at me, his eyes pleading. "I swear I was. After we were married, after we were settled. I thought it would be easier then. I just needed more time. Time wasn't going to change the fact that you have a son, Mark, I said. And it was never your decision to make alone. You took my choice away. You let me walk down that aisle and make vows to you, not knowing the most fundamental thing about your life. He had no answer to that. He just sat there, the picture of misery. Did you ever see him? I asked. Leo? He shook his head slowly. No, never. I've seen pictures Sarah sent once or twice a year, but I've never met him. The sadness of that for the little boy was a separate ache in my chest. So when he ran up to you, you really didn't recognize him? No, Mark said. Not until he said, Daddy. And then I saw his face, and he looks like me. I knew, and I panicked. I believed him. I believed that he was terrified and ashamed and that he hadn't planned for this to happen. That part of the story lined up with what Sarah had told me. He was a liar and a coward, but he wasn't the monster who had set the trap. That was Lisa. I need to know one more thing, I said, my voice hardening again. Lisa. She's been hinting for months that she knew something about your past. Did you ever tell her? Mark's head snapped up. Lisa? No, never. Why? She's the one who invited them, Mark, I said, watching his face closely. She found Sarah. She told her you wanted them there. She orchestrated the entire thing. He stared at me, his expression shifting from misery to disbelief, and then to a dawning horror. What? No, she wouldn't. Why would she do that? Because she hates me, I said simply. Because she can't stand to see me happy. She wanted to destroy my wedding day, and she used your secret to do it. Mark looked like he was going to be sick. He put his head in his hands. Oh my God, he muttered into his palms. I gave her this, my lie. I gave her the weapon to hurt you. He finally understood. It wasn't just his lie. It was the fuel for Lisa's fire. His cowardice had provided the perfect opportunity for her cruelty. Yes, you did, I said, standing up. The conversation was over. I had what I needed. I knew he was not in league with Lisa. His betrayal was his own, separate and distinct. It made my path forward simpler. I had two problems to deal with, but they did not need to be dealt with at the same time. Clara, wait, he said, jumping to his feet. What are we going to do? Can we fix this? I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll introduce you to Leo properly. We can be a family. The desperation in his voice was pathetic. He still wasn't getting it. There is no we, Mark, I said, turning to face him one last time. You and I are over. Our marriage was a fraud. I'll be contacting a lawyer about an annulment. As for your son, that is your business now. You need to figure out how to be a father. You can start by never, ever lying to him. Tears were streaming down his face now. Don't say that. Please, I love you. No, you don't, I said, the words cold and final. You love the idea of me. You love the easy life you thought we would have. But you don't respect me enough to tell me the truth. And without respect, there is no love. Goodbye, Mark. I walked away without looking back. I left him standing alone in the park, a casualty of his own deception. I felt a sliver of pity for him, but it was quickly consumed by the cold fire of my resolve. One target was neutralized. Now it was time to focus on the other. It was time to go after Lisa. And I knew exactly where to start. Her job. Her comfortable, unearned life. The entire house of cards my parents had built for her was about to come tumbling down. My next move had to be precise. A direct confrontation with my parents had failed. They were too deeply entrenched in their habit of protecting Lisa. I needed irrefutable proof that tied Lisa's actions to something they could not ignore. My father's business. His company was his pride and joy, the legacy he had built from the ground up. If I could prove Lisa had used his company to fund her attack on me, that was a betrayal he could not excuse. I called Amy. I need your help with some research, I said. I'm all ears. What are we digging for? Lisa's job. I want to know everything. Her title, her responsibilities, her privileges. Specifically, I want to know about her expense account. Amy was quiet for a moment. Oh, this is good, Clara. This is really good. Where do we start? The company website is a start, but it's all marketing fluff. I need insider information. Do you remember Mr. Henderson, Dad's business manager? The older guy? Gray hair, always wears a cardigan? The one who gave you a chocolate every time you visited the office as a kid? That's the one, I said. He's been with my dad for 30 years. He's always liked me. He's meticulous, honest, and he doesn't like laziness. I'm willing to bet he can't stand Lisa. So you're going to call him? Amy asked. Not yet, I said. That's my final play. First, I need to lay the groundwork with my father. I need to plant the seed of doubt myself. I steeled myself and called my dad. I told him I wanted to meet just the two of us. I framed it as needing his advice. He was relieved, thinking I was finally ready to be reasonable. We agreed to meet at his office on Saturday morning when it would be empty. Walking into that office building felt strange. It was a place I had visited countless times as a child. But now I was entering it as a woman on a mission. My father was waiting for me in his large corner office, the plans for a new housing development spread across his desk. Clara, he said, his voice gentle. He looked tired. I'm so glad you came. Hi, Dad, I said, sitting in one of the leather chairs opposite his desk. Your mother and I have been so worried. This whole situation with Mark, it's a mess. But we can get through it. He's a good man. He just made a terrible mistake. I held up a hand. Dad, I appreciate that. But I'm not here to talk about Mark. My marriage is over. That's a decision I've made. I'm here because I'm worried about something else. He looked confused. Worried about what? This was it. The first move. I'm worried about Lisa, I said, my voice full of carefully crafted concern. My father's expression immediately became defensive. Lisa is fine. She's been a rock through all of this. She's been so supportive of you. I know she's trying to be, I said, choosing my words carefully. But I've been thinking about her future. Her job here. What is it she actually does? He bristled. She's in project development. She helps scout new locations. I knew this was a vanity title. Lisa spent most of her days shopping online and taking long lunches. Right, I said. It's just, she seems to spend a lot of money. The condo, the car, her clothes. I know you and Mom help her out, but I worry she's not being responsible, especially if she has access to company funds. Lisa is very responsible with the company's money, he said sternly. She has an expense account for client meetings, of course, but everything is accounted for. Bob Henderson sees to that. He had mentioned the exact person I needed. Perfect. Oh, I know, I said quickly. I trust Mr. Henderson completely. It's just, Lisa can be very charming and persuasive. I just want to make sure she's not taking advantage of her position. It would be terrible for the company's reputation if anything looked improper. I was framing my concern as a desire to protect him and his business. It was the only angle that would work. I could see a flicker of doubt in his eyes, quickly masked by his paternal defensiveness. I appreciate your concern, Clara, but it's misplaced, he said, his tone final. Lisa is a good employee. Now, let's talk about the annulment. I can have my lawyer. I'll handle my own lawyer, Dad, I said, standing up. But thank you for the talk. It's helped me clear my head. I left his office knowing I had accomplished my goal. I had planted a tiny seed of suspicion. I had linked Lisa's name with financial irresponsibility in his mind. He would deny it on the surface, but the thought would fester. Now it was time for phase two. I went back to Amy's apartment and called Sarah. Sarah, it's Clara again. I have a quick question for you, and then I promise I will leave you alone. Okay, she said, her voice still cautious. The day you met my sister for coffee when she gave you the cash. Can you describe the cafe? Where was it? It was a little place called the Daily Grind, she said. Downtown near a lot of office buildings. It had a green awning. I did a quick search on my phone. The Daily Grind. It was 2 blocks from my father's company headquarters, just as I suspected. Thank you, Sarah, I said. You've been a huge help. I hope you and Leo are doing okay. We're getting there, she said. I hope you are too. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. All the pieces were falling into place. Lisa had met Sarah near her office. She had paid her in cash. It was almost certain she had used company money to do it. All I needed was the final piece of proof. It was time to call Mr. Henderson. I found his direct line through an old company directory I had. I dialed the number on Monday morning, my stomach in knots. He answered in his usual gruff but kind voice. Bob Henderson. Mr. Henderson, it's Clara, I said. My dad's daughter. Clara, how are you, my dear? I was so sorry to hear about the wedding. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. It's been a difficult time. Actually, that's partly why I'm calling. I need to ask for your help with something very sensitive. And I need to ask that you keep this conversation strictly between us. His voice became serious. All right. What's on your mind? It's about Lisa, I said, and her company expenses. I have a reason to believe she may have used company funds for a personal matter, a matter that was intended to cause me a great deal of harm. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could picture him in his neat, orderly office, his brow furrowed. He had never been one for drama, but he was a man of integrity. That's a very serious accusation, Clara, he said slowly. I know it is, I said, and I wouldn't make it if I weren't certain. I believe she used a company cash advance and expensed a personal meeting as a business lunch. Specifically, I need you to look at her expenses for the last 2 weeks. I gave him the details. I believe she took a cash advance of $200 or more around a week and a half ago, and I believe she expensed a lunch at a cafe called the Daily Grind sometime last week. The Daily Grind, he repeated. She expenses lunches there frequently. She says she meets with developers in that area. This time, she wasn't meeting with a developer, I said. She was meeting with a woman named Sarah to give her cash and instruct her to crash my wedding. I heard him draw in a sharp breath. My God. Can you look, Mr. Henderson? I pleaded. Please, my father won't listen to me. He'll only listen to facts, to numbers. He trusts you. The expense reports for this month are still being processed, he said, his mind clearly working. Let me see what I can find. I'll need to be discreet. Thank you, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. You've always been a good kid, Clara, he said quietly. Let me look into it. I'll call you back. The wait was agonizing. For 2 days, I heard nothing. I started to worry that he had changed his mind, or that he had gone to my father and I had lost my chance. Mark continued to send me desperate, rambling texts. I ignored them. My mother called, alternating between tearful pleas and angry accusations. I let them go to voicemail. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for the world to either snap back into place or break apart completely. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it tentatively. Clara, it's Bob Henderson. My heart leaped into my throat. Yes? I found it, he said, his voice grim. It's exactly as you said. She took a $200 cash advance from the corporate account 10 days ago. The reason listed was office supplies, petty cash. And 5 days ago, she submitted an expense receipt for $42 from the Daily Grind. The line item reads, Client Lunch. Sarah Jennings, real estate development. He had the name. Sarah must have given Lisa her full name. It was the final, damning piece of evidence. Lisa hadn't even bothered to invent a fake name. Her arrogance was astounding. She expensed it, I whispered, the confirmation sending a chill down my spine. She had used my father's money to pay for the meeting where she planned my public humiliation. She did, Mr. Henderson confirmed. Clara, what she did is not just cruel, it's fraud. It's grounds for immediate termination, and potentially legal action. I know, I said, my mind racing. Mr. Henderson, can you do one more thing for me? Can you print out those records? The cash advance slip and the expense report with the receipt. I already have, he said. What are you going to do? I'm going to end this, I said. All of it. I had the proof. Hard, undeniable financial proof. This wasn't about he said, she said anymore. This wasn't about faked text messages or a scorned ex-girlfriend's testimony. This was about company money. My father's money. It was a language he would understand perfectly. I arranged to pick up the documents from Mr. Henderson discreetly. He met me in the lobby of a neutral office building downtown and handed me a plain manila envelope. I thanked him profusely. He just nodded, his face sad. I'm sorry it came to this, Clara. Your father is a good man, but he has a blind spot. I know, I said. I'm about to remove it. With the envelope in my hand, I felt a surge of power. The hurt and humiliation were still there. But now they were overlaid with a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't the victim in this story anymore. I was the person holding all the cards. I went back to Amy's apartment and laid the documents out on her coffee table. The cash advance slip with Lisa's signature. The expense report with the fraudulent client lunch listed. The receipt from the daily grind stapled neatly to the page. It was a portrait of casual theft and breathtaking arrogance. This is it, Amy said, her voice a low whistle. This is the kill shot. Yes, it is, I agreed. It was time to call the meeting. I sent a group text to my parents, Lisa and Mark. I am calling a family meeting, my parents' house, tomorrow at noon. Everyone needs to be there. This is the last time we will all speak about this. It is not a request. The replies came in quickly. My parents agreed. Mark sent a simple, I'll be there. Lisa's reply was dripping with false sympathy. Of course, Clara. Whatever you need. I'm so worried about you. I didn't reply. Let her think she was coming to watch the final act of my marital breakdown. Let her walk into that room full of confidence and pity. The higher she felt, the harder she would fall. The next day couldn't come soon enough. I walked into my parents' house the next day feeling strangely calm. It was the house I grew up in, a place of a million memories, both good and bad. Today, it was a stage. I was carrying a leather portfolio. Inside it were the screenshots from Sarah and the manila envelope from Mr. Henderson. My mother met me at the door, her face etched with worry. Clara, I'm so glad you're here. Are you sure about this? Doing this all at once? I'm sure, I said, walking past her into the living room. My father was there, standing by the fireplace, his arms crossed. He looked stern. Mark was sitting on the edge of a couch, looking pale and sick. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And then there was Lisa. She was perched gracefully on an armchair, a mug of tea in her hands, looking for all the world like the concerned, supportive sister. She gave me a small, sad smile. Clara, she said softly, how are you holding up? I ignored her. I walked to the center of the room and turned to face them all. Thank you for coming, I began, my voice clear and steady. I called this meeting because there are things that need to be said, and I am only going to say them once. After today, this conversation is over. I looked first at Mark. He flinched under my gaze. Mark, you and I are getting an annulment, I stated, not as a point of discussion, but as a fact. Our marriage was based on a fundamental lie. You kept the existence of your own child a secret from me for 2 years. You denied me the right to make an informed choice about my own life. There is no coming back from that. I wish you well in figuring out your relationship with your son. He deserves a father, but I will not be a part of it. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. There is nothing left to say between us. This part is finished. He slumped back into the couch, defeated. The air in the room was thick with tension. My mother had tears in her eyes. My father's expression was unreadable. Then I turned my attention to Lisa. Now for the main event, I said, my voice turning to ice. Lisa's posture stiffened slightly. She put her tea mug down. Clara, I know you're hurting, but there's no need to be cruel. You want to talk about cruel, Lisa? I asked, taking a step towards her. Let's talk about cruel. Let's talk about you contacting a woman named Sarah Jennings, Mark's ex, a month before my wedding. Lisa's face went blank. I have no idea what you're talking about. My father spoke up. Clara, what is this? Sarah is the name of that woman who caused the scene. Exactly, Dad, I said, not taking my eyes off Lisa. Lisa found her. She befriended her. She fed her a fantasy that Mark wanted his son at the wedding, that he was just too scared to ask. That's a lie, Lisa cried, jumping to her feet. She's a crazy ex-girlfriend. She's making it all up to get attention. You're just believing her because you want someone else to blame. Am I? I asked calmly. I opened my portfolio and took out the printed screenshots of her texts with Sarah. I walked over and handed them to my father. Are these lies too? Read them. Read the friendly emojis. Read the part where she offers Sarah money for a new suit for her son. Read the part where she calls it a gift from your future family. My father took the papers, his hands trembling slightly. My mother read over his shoulder. I watched their faces as the truth sank in. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father's face turned from stern to thunderous. Lisa? My father said, his voice a low growl. What is this? Lisa was panicking now, her eyes darting between me and my parents. They're fake. Clara is trying to frame me. She's always been jealous of my relationship with you. It was a pathetic, desperate attempt to turn the tables, a tactic that had worked for her 100 times before. But not today. Jealous? I asked with a humorless laugh. You think I'm jealous of you? That's interesting. You know, I was wondering how you paid for this little scheme. Sarah said you gave her $200 in cash. You're not exactly swimming in disposable income, are you, Lisa? I used my savings, she stammered. Did you? I said, reaching back into my portfolio. Because I have a different story. I pulled out the manila envelope. I opened it slowly, deliberately. I took out the documents Mr. Henderson had given me. I held up the cash advance slip. This is a company cash advance request for $200, dated 10 days ago. The reason listed is office supplies. But the most interesting part is the signature at the bottom. It looks like yours, Lisa. Lisa's face went white. She looked like she was going to faint. And this, I continued, holding up the second document, is my personal favorite. It's an expense report. Also from you. On it, you've requested reimbursement for a $42 lunch at the Daily Grind. That's the cafe where you met Sarah, isn't it? And look at the client you listed. Sarah Jennings, real estate development. You didn't even have the sense to make up a name. I didn't give the papers to my father this time. I walked over and dropped them on the coffee table in front of him. You used Dad's company. You stole his money to finance a plan to publicly humiliate me and destroy my wedding. The room was utterly silent. The only sound was my mother's quiet, horrified sobbing. My father stared at the documents on the table, his face a mask of cold, hard fury I had never seen before. He looked at the signature. He looked at the receipt. He looked at the name Sarah Jennings. He slowly raised his head and looked at Lisa. You used my company, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. You stole from me. to do this, to your sister. Daddy, no, Lisa sobbed, her composure completely shattered. It was a mistake. I'll pay it back. I was just trying to expose him. For Clara. I was trying to protect her. It was her final, desperate lie. It was so transparently false that it was insulting. Protect her? My father roared, finally exploding. He stood up, and for a second I thought he might physically lash out. You brought this disaster down on our entire family. You humiliated your sister on the happiest day of her life. You used a child, and you did it with my money. Money from the business I built. The business that has fed you and clothed you and housed you your entire adult life. I'm sorry, she wailed, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, my father said, his voice dropping back to that terrifying, cold tone. You're fired, Lisa. Effective immediately. I want your keys to the office, the company car, and the company credit card on my desk by the end of the day. Lisa stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Fired? You can't fire me. I can and I am, he said. And the condo. The lease is in my name. I'm breaking it. You have 30 days to get your things and get out. You are cut off. Do you understand me? Completely. No, she screamed. You can't do this to me. It's not fair. Clara has always had everything. She gets the perfect life, the perfect husband. It's not fair. The husband who had a secret child? I interjected, my voice dripping with sarcasm. That perfect husband? Is that what you were so jealous of? You didn't do this to protect me. You did this because you couldn't stand seeing me have one single day that was just about me. My mother finally found her voice. She looked at Lisa, her face streaked with tears, but her eyes were clear for the first time. All these years, she whispered. All these years we made excuses for you. We protected you. We thought you were fragile, but you're not fragile. You're cruel. That, more than anything my father had said, seemed to break Lisa. The loss of her financial support was one thing, but the loss of her primary enabler, her mother, was the final blow. She crumpled into the armchair, her body racked with loud, ugly sobs. She was no longer the elegant, poised woman who had walked in. She was just a spoiled child having a tantrum because her toys were being taken away. I looked at Mark, who had watched the entire exchange in silent horror. He was seeing the full, toxic dynamic of my family for the first time. He looked at me, a glimmer of hope in his eyes, as if Lisa's downfall might somehow save him. I shut it down immediately. This changes nothing for us, Mark, I said, my voice firm. Her guilt doesn't erase your lies. His face fell. He understood. There was no way back. I had done it. I had exposed her. I had stripped her of her power, her privilege, and the willful blindness of our parents that had protected her for so long. The sense of victory was immense, but it was not joyful. It was a heavy, somber satisfaction. I had won, but the cost was the complete destruction of my family as I knew it. I turned and walked towards the door. Clara, wait, my father said, his voice strained. Where are you going? I'm going to find a lawyer, I said, not looking back. And then I'm going to start my life over. The real one this time. I walked out of the house and didn't look back. The war was over. Now, the quiet, difficult work of rebuilding had to begin. The days that followed were a quiet blur. I stayed with Amy, who acted as a gatekeeper, fielding calls and turning away unwanted visitors. My mother called a dozen times a day, leaving tearful, rambling voicemails. They were a mix of apologies for enabling Lisa and pleas for me to come back into the family fold, as if we could all just have Sunday dinner and pretend nothing had happened. I didn't answer. I needed space. I needed the silence to process the blast radius of the truth. My father, on the other hand, was ruthlessly efficient. He called me once, his voice tired but firm. It's done, he said. Her access has been revoked. The car has been collected. I've given the property manager notice for the condo. She has until the end of the month. What did she say? I asked, morbidly curious. She screamed. She cried. She blamed me. She blamed you. She blamed your mother. She took no responsibility. It was illuminating, he said, the word heavy with 30 years of regret. I am sorry, Clara. I am so sorry I didn't see it sooner. I know, Dad, I said, and for the first time I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He had been betrayed too. I hired a lawyer, a sharp woman who specialized in annulments based on fraud. The case was straightforward. Mark's concealment of a child was a material fact that went to the heart of the marriage contract. He didn't fight it. His lawyer contacted mine and agreed to all terms. The marriage would be wiped from the record as if it never happened. It was a clean, surgical procedure, but it left a scar all the same. Mark sent me one final, long email. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was a confession. He told me about his shame, his cowardice, and the deep regret he felt not just for lying to me, but for being an absent father to Leo. He said the wedding disaster had been a brutal wake-up call. He was starting therapy. He had contacted Sarah and was arranging to finally meet his son properly. He wrote that he hoped one day Leo would forgive him, but he knew he had no right to ask for my forgiveness. I read the email, deleted it, and felt a sense of closure. His journey was his own now. It no longer had anything to do with me. Lisa's downfall was more dramatic. She tried to get our extended family on her side, spinning a tale of a cruel sister and a tyrannical father. But the story of what she had done at the wedding had already spread like wildfire. When the financial details came out that she had stolen from the family business to fund her scheme, any sympathy she might have had evaporated. She was a pariah. A cousin of mine called me a few weeks later. "You will not believe this," she said. "Lisa is working as a hostess at the grill downtown. I saw her last night. She had to seat my friends and me. It was the most awkward thing I have ever experienced." I pictured it. Lisa, who had always prided herself on her style and status, forced to wear a cheap polyester uniform and lead people to their tables. Her face a mask of barely concealed fury and humiliation. She had never had a real job in her life. The reality of working for a living, of answering to a manager and earning a meager paycheck, must have been a brutal shock. The justice of it was grimly satisfying. My mother eventually stopped calling and showed up at Amy's apartment. Amy tried to run interference, but I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. I let her in. She looked older, smaller. "I brought you some things from the house," she said, handing me a box. It was full of my favorite books, some photos, things she thought I would miss. It was a peace offering. We sat in silence for a few minutes. "She's living in a tiny apartment across town," my mother said finally. "She won't speak to me, or your father. She says we've ruined her life." "She ruined her own life, Mom," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "All you and Dad did was finally stop enabling her." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know. It's so hard. To look back and see how blind I was. I thought I was protecting her, but I was just making her weaker. And I hurt you in the process. I always put your feelings second because I thought you were the strong one." "I was strong because I had to be," I said. "But I shouldn't have had to be. Not with my own family." It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. It was painful and raw, but it was real. It was the beginning of a new kind of relationship, one not based on old habits and unspoken resentments. After the annulment was finalized, I found my own apartment. It was small, and the furniture was mostly secondhand, but it was all mine. The quiet and solitude were a balm. I started to piece my life back together, not as a bride or a victim, but just as Clara. One sunny afternoon, a few months after the wedding, I was walking through a park not far from my new place. I saw a woman and a little boy playing near the pond, feeding the ducks. The boy had a mop of familiar curly brown hair. It was Sarah and Leo. Leo was laughing, a pure, joyous sound that carried across the grass. Sarah was watching him, a real relaxed smile on her face. She looked happy. She looked at peace. I saw a man sitting on a bench nearby, watching them. He was too far away to see clearly, but I recognized the set of his shoulders. It was Mark. He wasn't with them, but he was there. Watching. It was a start. I felt a strange mix of emotions. A pang of what might have been. A shadow of the life I had thought I would have. But it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of peace. That life was based on a lie. It was never real. My life, this new, quiet, solitary life, was real. It was mine. I thought about Lisa, working in a restaurant, stripped of the privilege she had always taken for granted. I thought about Mark, tentatively trying to build a bridge to a son he had ignored for years. I thought about my parents, grappling with a lifetime of mistakes. The truth had shattered us all, but in the wreckage, there was a chance for something more honest to grow. My wedding day was the worst day of my life. It was a public spectacle of humiliation and betrayal. But it was also the day I stopped making excuses for the people who hurt me. It was the day I took back my own power. I turned away from the scene at the pond and continued my walk. I did not look back. Lisa finally learned what it feels like to have nothing. And I, in losing everything I thought I wanted, finally learned what it felt like to be free.